Hi, I'm Colm Tóibín and I'm the author of these two novels, one called Brooklyn and the new one called Long Island. And I want to talk about the film of Brooklyn, how it made a difference in the composition of Long Island. I didn't write the screenplay. Nick Hornby wrote the screenplay, directed by a different person to me, obviously acted by people. So in other words, it's my book, but it's their film. And I just want to talk about what that process was like.
Oh, well, looking like a tart isn't going to be a problem.
This doesn't look too bad. My sister gave me that. Wear with this and this.
Have your bags ready for inspection?
Don't look too innocent, though. I'll put some rouge and mascara on you. Perhaps a little eyeliner. Stand up straight. Polish your shoes. And don't cough, whatever you do. Don't be rude or pushy, but don't look too nervous. Think like an American. You have to know where you're going.
Welcome to the United States, ma'am. Through the blue door, please. Next, please.
Yeah, I suppose the idea was that I would have somebody much more glamorous than Eilis on the ship, who really knows her way around the ship, who goes into first class, and who then looks at her and says, oh my God, you have to do something about yourself before. Like, they won't let you in if you have that sort of humble look. But it isn't just humility. What Saoirse has to do is look both sort of radiant and also unselfconsciously so. So she's not been looking in the mirror. She's just naturally got a sort of radiance. I think when you're writing, you never can think about, if this was a movie, who would play the part. I think it's an idle sort of thing. And then you can be lucky. You can get someone who, in a way, takes the whole thing from you. In other words, you imagine someone for the page. I think what Saoirse Ronan can do with her face is that she can work like a silent actress. So she knows very well that she's sort of pulling in light. Now, as a writer, you can never imagine this. And you can never think, this is what I need for my novel. This is something very lucky that can happen. So Noah was the last thing I would have thought, that somebody like that, just taking that scene there, where in 1 second, as she's getting her passport stamped, she's able to look at him, a look suggesting both humility and a sort of presence that's really radiant and magical. But as a writer, you've got to keep away from that sort of idea. As a novelist, sometimes you have to leave something out. For example, the last moment before she leaves Ireland the first time with her mother is not in the book because it's just too obvious to the reader. Yeah, they were sad. Yeah, they cried. Yeah, they hugged. But her going into America was the same for me. No, it's not hard to imagine someone going into America. And so what John Crowley, the director of the film, had to do was, it's not in the book. In other words, it moves from her being on the boat to being in the lodging, to being in her boarding house. Something has happened between. It's called getting into America. It's called Ellis Island. It's all the drama. So he had to bring that down to 2 or 3 images, really. The first one is the voiceover, where someone be like, look as though you look like an American. But then the idea was, instead of just walking into light, and of course, that becomes ironic later. But in that moment, no, she's walking into light. Just make it into one image using music, using her face, and then using light.
What is the matter with you girls now?
Nothing is the matter with us, Mrs. Keogh.
Is this all because Eilis just found herself a young man?
Eilis is a young man? We didn't know. She won't say anything about it.
And why should she? To you awful gossip mongers. Anyway, I met him on Saturday night when he called for Eilis, and he is a gentleman.
Will you tell us what you know about him, Mrs. Keogh? We know he's quite nice looking.
I didn't like his shoes much.
What on earth is wrong with his shoes?
They were a funny colour.
I tell you this much, I'm going to ask Father Flood to preach a sermon on the dangers of giddiness.
The idea, I suppose, is taken from Jane Austen, that you have a dance. And after the dance, then you have the discussion of what happened at the dance with a number of women, perhaps the mother, the sisters. Pride and Prejudice would be one example. I suppose the idea would be that the landlady is a force of nature in one way, but she's very watchful. And also what's very important is that you realize slowly how much she's coming to like Eilis and trust her. So many of the famous English actresses had Irish mothers. And I wouldn't swear to it, but I, as far as I remember, she was working from something that actually mattered to her, which was the idea that, she came from a source like that, a woman who would talk like that. She was playing it as an Irish character actress who had never played Irish parts before. But I mean, the actual way that she uses her face, the way she talks, the way she does things is out of Ireland. You cannot do that out of anywhere else. And she was using something, I think, that belonged to her in a way that as an actress she generally hadn't used.
You remember that after I had dinner at your house, you told me you loved me? Well, I didn't really know what to say. But I know what to say now. I have thought about you. And I like you. And I like being with you. And maybe I feel the same way. So the next time you tell me you love me, if there is a next time, I'll say I love you too.
I mean, I think the point here is as well that this is a love scene. That if you don't have this intimate thing between them, where there's no music, where there's no one else involved, and where something is allowed, in other words, it's not clear what she's going to say. And you must remember that a lot of people hadn't read the book. So you get this moment where she's just trying to work it out. And she doesn't want to just say, yeah, I love you, because that's not how she thinks or talks. So you get this sense of her almost resting with how am I going to say this? Where he's all eager. He's like a kid, but she's all careful and watchful. But you need then the constant business. Whose face are you going to work with? Hers. He's just going to be the listener. So the camera moves closer to, and gets her voice as a purer voice. So it's a very pure, beautiful scene because because I suppose the reason is that you're hearing it from his side. It's as though you've become him, even though the camera's on her. Tony's casting is that he's Italian, but unlike his brothers, he's not dark as they are. So he's slightly different looking, which means he can make it to the Irish dance without standing out, as a complete Italian. So that was always in my view, that he just didn't seem like an Italian at the beginning. And whatever that means. But I mean, what we're talking about is dark hair and very dark eyes. And he doesn't have that. So finding somebody like Emery Cohen who could exude a sort of New York thing.
This is it. We're gonna build 5 houses here, if we can. And Mom and Dad, they're gonna have one because Ma always wanted a house with a backyard. We'll sell 3. And the other one, my brothers, they asked me if I wanted it, and I said that I did. So, I guess what I'm saying is you want to live out here on Long Island. I mean, I know it doesn't look like much right now, but all the land around here has been sold, so we wouldn't be on our own, and there'd be telephone cables and electricity and everything. Don't go all quiet on me. At least tell me to think about it.
I don't need to think about it.
John Crowley, who directed the film of Brooklyn, I mean, among his many other qualities is that he listens. And if he asks you something, you find that he's actually paying attention. And he just asked me a simple question at a certain point. Is there one moment in the book or even in the screenplay that you think is of particular significance that I should mark? And I said, yeah, it's that this is about the future. And this scene where they go out to look at these green fields, which will soon become a town, that this is the crucial moment in the thing, because it's another time where you're talking about a wider America, where this idea of the suburbs, the constant new suburbs being created in America, and Tony planning the whole thing out, the number of houses they're going to build and what they're going to do. I didn't realize when I had that Long Island that these years later I would write a novel called Long Island. But I did know where their future lay, in the sense it lay in Long Island, and it lay in this sort of development. He plans to sell some. In the novel, finally, they don't actually. They build 4 and keep all 4, the family. So you have her looking as though it's the most comfortable, easy world, which it is to some extent in the novel Long Island. But this scene, and I didn't, of course, had an idea what John would do with this. He does it first as intimate, and then he goes where you can see Emery Cohen's face in slightly blurred, and Eilis is just trying to work out, looking at, this is where I will live, this is what it will be. And then what John Crowley does is he just gets the camera and goes back makes it panorama. And of course, when you see this, it could be, if you didn't know the context, it could be just a field. But no, this is the future. And so he's moving back to show you that. But and that arose from a very brief conversation where I was never sure if he would do anything visually, how he would do that. But this is an example of the director as listener.
So you're going back?
Yes. Tomorrow.
Are you on the early train? I'm going to bed.
Mammy, it's not even 8 o'clock. You don't have to.
I'm very tired. And I'd like to say goodbye now. And only once.
You know, there are scenes that you don't want to write, and the farewell scene, I just felt always, as in the novel, don't write farewell scenes. People can imagine them. So this is the second one in the novel, which I'm not going to write. All she's going to say to her is, which I think is the cruelest idea, that I'm going to bed now. And when you get up in the morning, like all through, it's 8 o'clock, for the next few hours, you're going to know I'm in my bedroom, not asleep, while you're packing. And then in the morning, you do this on your own. You've gone on your own. I thought, as a starker image than the hug, the farewell, the tears, all the stuff, to have silence. And often when you're working on a novel, that's what you need more than, is there a way that I can bring this down? Here, of course, it's one moment where you can get exactly what the novel is saying. I'm going to bed now. It's only 8 o'clock. I'm not sure that's in the novel. I think it's in the script, meaning it really is early. It's August. And you realize exactly the same thing, where the novel you realize, wow, for the next few hours, these two women are going to be in a small house, circling each other, one of them not leaving. And that's just got in 4 lines of dialogue here. In other words, it's exactly what I was trying to imagine in the novel being caught in the same way in the film. One of the things that happened here is that the town, it's filmed in the town of Enniscorthy, where I'm from and where the novel is set. Just John Crowley went to look at it and saw that he could do that there. The other thing then that matters enormously is that Jane Brennan, who plays her mother, is an old friend of mine. So in a way, having some of your old friends who are actresses playing parts that you have created for the page, and suddenly you get a call saying, Jane's playing the mother. I said, that was amazing, just to watch someone like Jane, and she can really work with this immense mixture of sort of power and subtlety, and playing some very elemental things in a way that was satisfied me for a number of reasons. But one was that she was a friend.
When you get to immigration, keep your eyes wide open. Look as if you know where you're going. You have to think like an American. You'll feel so homesick that you'll want to die. And there's nothing you can do about it apart from endure it. But you will. And it won't kill you.
This scene isn't in the book. For some reason, I find the scene very moving. And I think the difference between a novel and a film is that in a novel, you're asking the reader all the time to imagine things. So you say, she went into the room. You don't have to show her, and you don't have to show the room. The reader then, just from those few words, imagines the moment. Obviously in a film, which is so frustrating if you're a writer involved in film, is the length of time it would take to get somebody into a room with the amount of set changing and costumes, that the pact between reader and writer is one where the reader is constantly engaged in imagining from a set of codes or clues you offer. In film, it's spelled out that you actually see the thing. So in other words, what I can do in the novel is imply that she went back, imply what happened. And the reader can put the book down thinking, I think I can see that. And therefore, that moment, which I think is pure genius. And I don't know, like whether it was in, but I presume it's John Crowley, the director, with Nick Hornby thinking, the brother sees her first. And I just found that idea that, Tony doesn't see her first, it's the brother. And the brother realizes, and then you watch the sort of big, I suppose, another love scene, just the two of them together as a sort of, it's trying to move it closer into sort of almost myth. These are star-crossed lovers, return to each other. And in a novel, with the way I work ironically. I work in whispers, I work with implication. I wouldn't know how to do star-crossed lovers finally meeting each other and embracing. I simply wouldn't know how to do it. But in a film, I would expect, there it is. You can use the music, you can use the voiceover, you can use the different angles. Her always alone, always her face alone. Tony can be much more socialized. And so there are many, many things you can do if you're a film director that you just can't do or mustn't do if you're a novelist. Yes, I think that when I came to write the sequel, the Long Island book, that I knew them. It didn't maybe manifest itself all the time, but for me it did. I was able to tell what she would do now. But I think the figure played by Donald Gleeson in the film, of the guy who owns the bar and who really falls in love with her in Ireland. This is in Brooklyn. I realized from the way Donald Gleeson had played that he was playing the most difficult thing imaginable, which is just straightforward, easygoing, nice guy in Ireland. He doesn't have any darkness in him. He doesn't have any brutality in him. And he's not someone who, when he's drunk, you see his real self. All those cliches about Irish men, all of that, which is in the theatre, which is in every image we make of Irish men. I wanted to get all that out. And one of the clues for Long Island for getting it out was just watching how Donald Gleeson, there's one particular moment where they're having dinner together. He tries to explain to her he's never really been anywhere. He'd like to go places. And you realize he's a genuine fellow, and I thought, what an interesting thing. That there's no great history of this. And so I think Donald's performance was very, very helpful in setting that up for me. I think that God gave me a very limited intelligence. But one of the things God told me when I was coming on earth is, don't get in the way of anyone. If you ask Nick Hornby to do this, Nick Hornby, write the screenplay, and Nick Hornby is good enough to do it, then don't call him up and annoy him. Don't write him emails. Don't tell him how he should do his job. And I'm not sure he would have entertained the idea anyway. He's smart too. We just kept away from each other, I think quite rightly. And when it was finished, I think maybe he had done a few drafts and all the others had seen it. Then I saw it. And basically I came over to London to thank him in the basis that, that he had, I thought, done a wonderful job, but also we weren't in competition with each other. He wasn't about to try and put, the stamp, like to change her to become an English woman, for example. Nothing like that was on his mind. So there was an effort on his part, I suppose, to be faithful to the book, but more than that, to be faithful to a dream he had of what the film might look like. So I think he'd want to have something deeply wrong with your character that would manifest itself in other ways that could probably result in a jail sentence if you started to annoy a screenwriter who was writing the screenplay of your novel. So it just was never like that for a single moment. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about the way in which the film mattered to the book and the book mattered to the film.